Hello students, now we are going to see about institutional framework of disaster management in India. That is to combat disaster in what hierarchy or who are all the teams who are involved in the disaster management in India. Okay, so first we will see National Disaster Management Authority NDMA. That is the national level. We'll go from the national level to the local level. Okay, so National Disaster Management Authority. So how it is formed? We had an act called Disaster Management Act in 2005. So according to this act, there should be a National Disaster Management Authority that should be set up with the Prime Minister as the chairperson. So who heads this team? The chairperson is the Prime Minister of India. So apart from this, there will be members nominated from various states. So among these members, one of the member will be the chairperson of the authority. So he will directly report to the Prime Minister. It doesn't mean that the Prime Minister take care of everything. So he is the head of the team. He will be assisted by a vice chairperson. So Prime Minister is the chairperson and the one member from the team will be the vice chairperson. So they will have a group of members who assist them. So wherever a disaster happens, this team will coordinate all the components like preparedness, mitigation, response, recovery, rehabilitation, reconstruction, and all these will be done with the guidelines of this team under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister of India. Next is National Level Executive Committee. So it is composed of high profile ministerial members from the Government of India, including who all Union Home Secretary. He is the chairperson of this executive committee, and the secretaries from the Government of India like ministries and Department of Agriculture, Atomic Energy, Defense, Drinking Water Supply, Environmental, Forest, etc. So different secretaries from these like important ministries will be the member of this committee. So National Executive Committee, what they will do, they are responsible for preparing and updating a national plan for disaster management. So their duty is to prepare and update in all the scientific levels, prepare for any kind of natural calamity or a man-made disaster. So this team always have a plan of action. So under this committee, you will have important people who are from various important departments and ministries who are learned professionals. Okay. The next one is state level. The State Disaster Management Authority, SDMA. So according to the Disaster Management Act of 2005, not only in the national level there should be a management authority, but also there should be a management authority in the state level to combat any kind of disaster. So as the chairman of this National Disaster Management Authority is Prime Minister, in the same way the state level Disaster Management Authority, the chairperson will be the Chief Minister of the state. The committee, again there will be a committee under the chairmanship of the Chief Minister, which will comprise of many important ministers, important personnel from the state, like state secretaries of different ministry. So they all form a group. Next is district level. District level Disaster Management Authority. So this DDMA, that is District Level Management Authority. The head of this is the District Collector, Deputy Commissioner or District Magistrate, depending upon the situation, with the elected representative of the local body as the co-chairperson, like the councillors and the ward members, they are the co-chairpersons. So this DDMA, District Disaster Management Authority, ensures what they do, they ensures the guidelines framed by National District Management Authority and State District Management Authority, and it is followed by all the departments of the state and at the district level and the local authorities of the district. Okay, so the national level, state level, now district level. The national level, the prime minister is the head of the chairperson of the team, and in the state level, it is the chief minister who is the chairperson of this SDMA, and in the district level, it is either the deputy commissioner or the district collector or the district magistrate, depending upon the situation. They will be heading this team. They have to follow the guidelines given by National District Management Authority and State Disaster Management Authority and National Disaster Management Authority. Then local authorities. Who are the local authorities? The Panchayat Raj institutions, municipalities, district and cantonment, and institution and legal arrangement boards and town planning authorities which control manage civic services. So they all belong under the local authorities. So National Institute of Disaster Management. So what is National Institute of Disaster Management? It is formed by National Center for Disaster Management in 1995, but redesignated as the National Institute of Disaster Management after the enactment of the Disaster Management Act in 2005. So the Disaster Management Act of 2005, it has given a lot of guidelines for combating the disaster management. So this institute is headed by the Union Home Minister and the Vice Chairman. So NDMA also acts as the Vice President of this institute. So we saw the National Disaster Management Authority, that Vice Chairman, he also acts as the Vice President of this institute. Next is National Disaster Response Force, NDRF Force. This NDRF Force is the word which you would have heard in so many places. When the news, when there is a flood or a cyclone, you can think NDRF force has come. The NDRF force has come with so many people, they have reached the city. That is NDRF force. So they are the people who directly involve into disaster management. First, we will see when it was constituted. It was constituted in the year 2006 with 8 battalions drawn from paramilitary forces. They are the trained personnel. But now the strength is 10 battalions. The General Superintendent of the force is in NDMA, and the force is headed by the Director General of National Disaster Response Force and Civil Defense. So these battalions are positioned in different locations to provide timely response unto disaster situations that are available at state government and time of need. So the National Disaster Response Force is deployed in all the states. So they work under the NDRF, but they will be placed in different state under the responsibility of the state government, so that easily they could reach the disaster place. So if they all are placed only in Delhi, so if suppose if there is a sudden flood or a cyclone, anything happens in a state, so the travel time of this NDRF force will take a lot of time. So to avoid that, this NDRF force is deployed in different states for timely response, so that they could reduce the or minimize the effects of the disaster. Integrated Data Resource Network. So data resource network is nothing but the communication system. So it's a network, it is a database in electronic form maintained by the Ministry of Home Affairs. So the data enlist an inventory of equipment and human resource relevant to disaster management. It will have all the equipments related to disaster management, that is the satellite connections. They will have the communication methods. So if there is going to be a cyclone, our meteorological department, they detect it before a week, so that this NDRF force can be prepared to help people or to save people who are staying in the low-lying areas or move to a safety place. So this is the mitigation. So they are being prepared with the boats and lifeboats, and they keep the schools and the marriage halls ready to rescue the people and make them stay in those places temporarily, so that we could stop the damage of or loss of life. So this is the integrated data resource network, which will help us to predict or to prepare for any disaster in advance. So all such equipments and inventories comes under IDRN, that is Integrated Data Resource Network. This is maintained by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Next is other institutional arrangements. Okay, what are the other institutional arrangements? to manage or combat any kind of disaster. First one is the Cabinet Committee on Management of Natural Calamities, CCMNC, that has been constituted to oversee, to monitor, to supervise all aspects relating to the management of calamities. This NDRF force and all the state level disaster management teams, they all are monitored by this cabinet. And National Calamity Contingency Fund was created in 2000 and 2001 by the Government of India with a corpus fund of rupees 500 crores with an objective of aiding disaster affected areas. So this you would have heard, the Prime Minister Relief Fund, the Chief Minister Relief Fund. So this is the contingency fund from the government. They will allocate or allot us some amount of money that could be used during the time of disaster. Instead of asking for money from someone, instead of diverting the money from some other departments, it is better to have a contingency fund in time of need, in time of any disaster. This fund will be directly utilized by the central government, or it will be given to the state government for combating or to involved in the process of response and recovery and reconstruction also. And armed forces are called upon to assist civil administration only when the situation is beyond coping capability. The armed forces, the military paramilitary forces will be called during the time of need. Then central paramilitary forces also play a key role in the time of immediate response to disasters. State police and fire services. This, of course, you all know, the state police and the fire services come immediately for the rescue before the central paramilitary forces and armed forces could come. Our own state police and the fire services come and do the rescue services, which are limited to their own capacity, which is beyond their capacity, will be handled by the central paramilitary force and the armed forces, and they are required to improve their response capabilities. Then the legislations to prevention of biohazards in India. Now, what are the law that is prevailing in India to prevent biohazards? Biohazards are man-made disaster, like Water Act 1974, which control and prevent pollution. Like you all know, all the vehicles should have an pollution control board certificate. That is to ensure that your vehicle is not creating any kind of a causing any kind of air pollution. And for water pollution, any new industries or any new factories are built, they should make sure that they get a certificate to prove that they are not causing any kind of pollution. This is to manage, or this is to reduce the damages caused by these industries. And Environmental Act 1986 and the rules of 1986, that is to save our environment. Suppose if you are going to start an industry or a factory in any remote part of the city, and if that place is surrounded with greenery, and you should make sure that you don't disturb the ecosystem of the place. And so this Environmental Protection Act ensures that the environment is safeguarded. So in January 2005, 168 governments adopted a 10-year plan to make world safer from natural hazards at the World Conference in Disaster Reduction held in Kobe, Hyogo, Japan. So all these countries, they have formed a 10-year plan, that is for a long-term plan. The Hyogo framework, it is a global blueprint. Blueprint is a guideline for reduction of disaster and the efforts during the next 10 years. Its goal is to substantially reduce disaster losses by 2015 for the life and the socio-economic and environmental assets of communities and countries. So the main aim of this was to reduce the disaster loss. So the framework offers guideline principles, priorities for action, which action should be done first, which should be done next. So the priorities of action: practical means of achieving disaster resilience for vulnerable communities. So how to prepare people practically in creating a resilience. Resilience is a power to withstand, a power to go through, a tough situation, so increasing the resilience among the vulnerable communities. So what they did, what they notified in their conference was, they ensured that disaster risk reduction is a national and local priority with a strong institutional base for implementation. So every state should make disaster reduction as their priority. Particularly, natural hazards must be considered in public and private sector decision making in the same way that the environmental and social impact assessments are currently required. So, the countries must therefore develop or modify policies, laws, and organizational arrangements to implement all these programs. They must allocate sufficient resources also to maintain these policies. So every country should identify, assess and monitor disaster risk. So they should find out which places are more prone to disaster risk, and they should have an enhancement of early warning system. So before any natural disaster should happen, we should be able to analyze and assess the damages and take prior steps to uh, prevent those disasters or to handle them effectively. So use the knowledge, innovation and education to build a culture of safety and resilience at all levels. So today our technology has grown very advanced. So using these innovations and education, we should build a safety environment and resilience at all level in the society. So reduce the underlying risk factors, vulnerability to natural hazards in many ways. For example, local communities in hazard-prone areas such as floodplains, then destroying the forest and wetlands, thereby harming the capacity of environment to withstand the hazards. Since we are cutting down the trees, we are having more soil erosion. So we are getting flood. Then public facility building, public facilities and housing unable to withstand the impacts of hazards and not having social and financial safety mechanisms in place. So reducing the underlying risk factors. And we have to strengthen the disaster preparedness for effective response at all levels. So we should have enough fund, we should have a strong team at all levels. So we should be able to prepare ourselves for any kind of disaster. So I hope you all understand about the defense mechanisms or the different mechanisms used, different bodies that are involved in disaster management in India. Thank you.